Fools for Thought.
And hello everybody once again. Welcome to another episode of Fools for Thought. This is episode number 8. I am Steve, your host, and I will be going it alone for this episode. I'm going stag. And we will be talking about the Star Spangled Banner, our national anthem. Now, most people do know what our national anthem is, of course, but few people know the history behind it. And in the interest of full disclosure, I learned quite a few things in my research for this particular episode that, of course, I forgot from my 11th grade history class. But few people know the motivations behind the Star Spangled Banner, who wrote it, and why it was written and where it was written. I think the history of our national anthem is very interesting, so let's go ahead and take a look. Believe it or not, the Star Spangled Banner was not our national anthem for very long. It was signed into law as our national anthem, but only back in 1931. The Star Spangled Banner was written in 1814 by Francis Scott Key, and he was referring to his experiences witnessing the Battle of Fort McHenry during the War of 1812. And so the story goes like this. During the War of 1812, the British Royal Navy took several prisoners and were holding them captive on board one of their ships out in the water off the coast of Baltimore. And Francis Scott Key and John Skinner were set to secure the release of these prisoners by negotiation. Now, while they were successful in getting those prisoners released from the British Royal Navy, they also overheard battle plans from the Royal Navy, and they would not let them actually leave. So the prisoners were allowed to board Francis Scott Key's boat, but the boat was physically held there and was not allowed to leave because they knew the British Royal Navy's upcoming battle plans, and of course they did not want them to let their authorities, the government, the American government at the time, know and prevent the war. And specifically, this was the attack on Baltimore. So here is Francis Scott Key. He's just sitting on a boat, not being able to leave, and he's witnessing the bombardment of Fort McHenry. So during the war, of course, he witnessed explosions on the ground and also bombs bursting in the air all throughout the night. But what inspired him is the next day, when the sun rose, he saw the American flag flying triumphantly above the fort. Of course, the flag at the time only had 15 stars and stripes. Now, at the time on the boat, Francis Scott Key penned this particular poem just on the back of a letter. But once he got back on land, he completed the particular tune at the Indian Queen Hotel, and it was originally titled "The Defense of Fort McHenry." And another little-known fact, this particular song actually has 4 different stanzas, although we only typically sing the first one before professional sporting events. And so let's take a look at these words. "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight." So this is saying, in the morning, I saw the flag, I saw the stars and the stripes waving triumphantly above Fort McHenry. I know we were successful because of that beautiful flag I saw that next morning. Next, "Or the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming," that's actually a question, "and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there." Meaning, throughout this battle, throughout all the explosions, through the bombs bursting in the air, our flag proved strong and was still there throughout that long, long battle. And lastly, "Oh, say does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" So does it continue standing? Does it continue waving over the land of the free and the home of the brave? Well, yes, it does. And now let's take a listen to the complete Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem, produced by the U.S. Army Band. That sure does inspire some patriotism, doesn't it? And that really leads me into my next segment called My Take. And in this segment, I want to talk about patriotism. What is patriotism? What do you have to be a patriot? I mean, do you consider you a patriot? Yourself, take a look at your life. Take a look at what how you view our country and our government and what it's doing. Do you have to blindly accept everything that the government does to be a patriot, or can you hate your government and be a patriot? Can you oppose virtually everything it does, but respect the freedom and liberty that we have in this country and still be a patriot? What exactly defines patriotism to you? I personally love this country. I love this country for its potential. I don't like, however, some of the things that our government, especially at the federal level, is doing. Like, for example, minimum wage at the federal level. I don't believe it has any basis at the federal level. Keep that to the states. Getting involved in foreign conflicts, I'll say it that way, overseas. Or the fact that we can have forward deployment, military bases all over the world under the premise of national security, but we still have catastrophes like 9/11 happen. A lot of this just doesn't make sense to me, and more I am questioning the things that our government does, and really the motivations behind why they are putting in place some of these policies and pushing forth these same procedures that don't seem to be doing a lot of good, at least from the perspective of the people. So guys, check out what classic American writer Ambrose Bierce considers patriotism to be. He wrote, "Patriotism is as fierce as a fever, pitiless as a grave, blind as a stone, and irrational as a headless hen." Wow. So according to him, to be a patriot, it's effectively blind adherence, blind loyalty towards your government, accepting everything it does, everything it says, everything that it gets involved with. That seems to be what he believes patriots to be. I don't necessarily believe it goes that far. I believe a patriot is somebody who supports their country, but that doesn't necessarily mean that person also supports everything that their government does. To be a patriot, you support the idea of freedom and liberty. You support property rights. You support our freedom to make our own decisions, our freedom of speech, our freedom of religion. As long as we're not directly influencing or affecting negatively somebody else, do what you want. That, to me, is a patriot. These libertarian type of ideals, you don't have to be a libertarian, of course, but that kind of thought process where people are the masters of their own destiny, they don't have to be controlled by some overarching authority. To me, American patriots believe in the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to be secure in these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Obviously, I did not write those words, but I do believe that they accurately define what a patriot is. And when I say the right to life, I am not referring to any abortion issues. In fact, I am very much pro-choice. I believe women should be able to make whatever decision they believe is best for them and their futures. So it has nothing to do with that, nothing to do with politics. This is pure theory. And this is really what gets at the heart of what I believe a true American patriot is, one that believes in freedom and liberty for every man, woman, and child in this country. And that is my take. What about you guys? Do you consider yourself a patriot, and how do you define patriotism? Let me know on foolsforthought.com or shoot me an email. I am on the contact page. And for our last segment, let's take a look at some interesting and downright weird news. Alright guys, so when you park in a parking lot, do you pull in head first or do you back in? Personally, I'm a back-in kind of guy. I always like to back in to make it easier to pull out. I can see traffic better. All right, so what if you pull into a spot and the space directly ahead of it is also free? Do you pull all the way through and effectively back into the space in front of you, even though you're pulling straight through another one to get to it? Or do you stop short and just take that first space that will require you to eventually back out of that spot when you're ready to leave again? All right, guys, believe it or not, there was a study published originally by the NPR and picked up by the Huffington Post. The study used reverse parking as an indicator of the willingness to delay gratification and linked that to the economic growth rates of countries. So the article said, for instance, 88% of cars were reverse parked or effectively backed into a spot in China, compared to only 6% in the U.S. And researchers found that countries that practiced delayed gratification or back-in parking had better economic outcomes. And it's the same kind of behavior setting up, for a payoff later that can affect a country's economic success. Well, isn't that interesting? I don't know if you can necessarily correlate cause and effect here. The article is essentially saying the countries that back in more than pull straight in have a greater potential for success or have a bigger economy or greater economic growth. That seems a little far-fetched, but it's still interesting to consider. And here's an interesting story from the San Francisco Gate. There was a bill that was sent out by the Maine Water District Company for $1.40 to a resident of Topsham, to a customer's post office box. The problem was the post office box was closed, and it was supposed to be returned to the Maine Water District. The interesting thing here is that bill was sent out in 1969. So 46 years later, last Tuesday in fact, it was finally returned to the Maine Water District. So think about that for a minute. We have a system set up apparently where a bill and envelope can sit around for nearly a half century, 46 years, and then finally get found and then returned to the original owner. I don't know how this happens. I don't know how it could happen. I don't know how a bill, an envelope, a package, whatever, could sit around for almost a half century with nobody doing anything about it, and then suddenly somebody stumbles upon it and says, well, maybe we should send this one back. And next, talk about putting urine to good use. This one comes out of Sky News. A prototype toilet which uses urine to generate electricity has been launched on a UK university campus. Apparently there is a microbial fuel cell stack that converts the urine into power as microbes feed on urine for their growth. So the Sky News article says it is hoped that the technology will be used to help light cubicles in an international refugee camp where people are at risk of rape and sexual assault in dark toilets. Converting a waste product to power. How awesome is that? All right, guys, last but not least, from ABC News, apparently the Sullivan County district in upstate New York is the place to be. This New York County got its second $100+ million lottery winner in 3 months. The latest was a gal named Tammy Pratt. She was a real estate agent and bought $4 worth of lotto tickets instead of her usual one once she found out that the lotto topped $100 million. She won just this week in January. Looks like a school principal won as well. That was a $326 million Mega Millions jackpot, which was drawn back in November. So 2 $100+ million lottery winners in 3 months in Sullivan County, New York. All right, guys, who's going to be first? All right, guys, that is it. It was a short and sweet episode. It was just me today. We talked about the national anthem and looked at some history behind it. It was written by Francis Scott Key after witnessing the Battle of McHenry. We then took a look at patriotism. In my take, I defined to you what I believe patriotism was, and then we took a look at some really weird and interesting news stories. And remember, guys, always back into your spot, because apparently it helps the economy. Thank you for listening to Fools for Thought. We appreciate your ear, and I will see you next time.